The morning of June 14, 1944, arrives cold and gray over the bocage country of Normandy. Sergeant Thomas Harker crouches behind his 6-pounder anti-tank gun, fingers numb against the breech mechanism. The hedgerows rise like fortress walls on either side of the sunken road. Dew clings to the camouflage netting draped over his position. Everything smells of wet earth and gun oil. He hears them before he sees them. A low rumble. Diesel engines. The metallic squeal of track links grinding through mud. His loader, Private Davies, glances over, eyes wide, mouth tight. Harker presses his face to the gunsight. Through the narrow glass, shadows move between the hedgerows 300 yards down the road. Dark hulls, angular turrets. The distinctive silhouette of Panzer IVs, moving in column formation, nose to tail, exactly as doctrine dictates. His training screams one command: engage the lead vehicle, disable it, block the road. But Harker has seen that tactic fail 3 times in the past week. He adjusts his aim, not to the front, not to the lead tank. Somewhere deeper in the column, his finger tightens on the trigger. By the summer of 1944, the war in Western Europe has entered a phase of grinding attrition. 8 days have passed since Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy. The initial euphoria of D-Day has given way to something grimmer. The Germans are not collapsing. They are defending every mile of French soil with a ferocity that surprises even the most seasoned Allied commanders. The bocage terrain, that dense patchwork of hedgerows and sunken lanes, has become a tactical nightmare. What planners in England saw as farmland turns out to be a network of natural fortifications. Every field is a potential kill zone. Every hedge conceals a machine gun nest or anti-tank position. Movement is slow. Casualties are high. The front advances in yards, not miles. British and American anti-tank units find themselves in a brutal learning curve. The weapons they trained with in England, weapons designed for open desert or rolling plains, struggle in this claustrophobic landscape. The 6-pounder gun, standard issue for British infantry anti-tank platoons, is effective enough against the lighter Panzer IVs and early Mark IV variants. But the Germans are fielding upgraded armor. Frontal plates on the newer Panzer IVs can deflect rounds at anything but point-blank range. The 75mm guns mounted on those same Panzers outrange the 6-pounders by a comfortable margin. Engagements become a game of ambush and concealment. Gunners learn to wait, to let the enemy close to suicidal distances before firing, to aim for track wheels and side armor, to pray the first shot counts. Doctrine is clear. When a panzer column advances down a road, you target the lead vehicle, knock it out, block the lane, force the following tanks to halt, to bunch up, to expose themselves while they maneuver around the wreck. It makes tactical sense on paper. In practice, it has proven disastrous. German tank commanders are not fools. They expect the ambush. The lead panzer is often the most alert, the most prepared. Its crew scans every hedgerow, every shadow. The moment the anti-tank gun fires and reveals its position, the entire column responds with overwhelming violence. High explosive shells tear through hedgerows. Machine gun fire rakes suspected positions. Smoke and dust obscure everything. By the time the gunners reload, they are already bracketed by return fire. Survival becomes a matter of luck. Harker has seen it happen 3 times in 6 days. Good crews, well-positioned guns, textbook ambushes, all of them shredded within minutes of opening fire. The 6-pounders are towed away in pieces. The crews are buried in shallow graves or evacuated with wounds that end careers. The panzers roll on. The tactic works in theory. It fails in blood. There is another problem. Training emphasizes discipline. Fire on command. Engage designated targets. Follow the plan. Deviation is discouraged. Initiative, while theoretically valued, is rarely rewarded in practice. Officers plan. Sergeants execute. Gunners pull triggers when told. This rigidity has cost lives. Harker knows it. So do the other survivors in his platoon. But knowing and acting are different things. The British Army does not encourage freelancing. A sergeant who ignores doctrine risks court-martial as much as enemy fire. Still, desperation breeds innovation. Harker has spent the past week watching how the Germans move, how they space their vehicles, how the lead tank commander behaves versus those further back. He has noticed patterns. The lead panzer is cautious, scanning constantly, ready to reverse or pivot at the first sign of danger. The second and third vehicles in the column follow closely, too closely, trusting the lead tank to spot threats. They relax slightly. Their hatches stay open longer. Their reaction time lags. Further back, the fourth and fifth tanks are even more complacent, sometimes distracted by radio chatter or the simple monotony of convoy movement. If you could hit one of those middle vehicles first, the entire dynamic changes. The lead tank does not know where the threat is. The rear vehicles cannot maneuver. Confusion replaces coordination. Harker has not shared this theory with his platoon commander. He has not written it in a report or proposed it at a briefing. He simply carries it in his mind, turning it over during long nights in foxholes, weighing risk against potential. He knows what the manual says. He also knows what he has seen. Somewhere between doctrine and survival, a choice waits to be made. The sector Harker's unit defends sits 2 miles south of Villers-Bocage, a market town that has already become synonymous with armored carnage. Just days earlier, a single German Tiger tank commanded by SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann tore through an entire British column in minutes, destroying more than a dozen tanks and vehicles before withdrawing unscathed. The psychological impact of that engagement still lingers. Every engine sound makes men flinch. Every shadow could hide 88mm death. The bocage amplifies this dread. Visibility rarely exceeds 100 yards. Ambushes come from nowhere. Escape routes vanish behind walls of earth and vegetation. Harker's platoon, part of the 50th Northumbrian Division, has been in continuous contact with German forces since landing on Gold Beach 8 days ago. They are tired. Not the tiredness that comes from missed sleep, though that is part of it, but the deeper exhaustion that seeps into bone and spirit, the kind that makes hands shake when there is no reason to shake, that makes familiar sounds seem alien and threatening. They have lost friends. They have dragged wounded men through mud. They have learned that bravery and survival are not the same thing. The defensive position Harker occupies was chosen 3 days ago by Lieutenant Ashford, a young officer fresh from Sandhurst with textbook knowledge and minimal field experience. Ashford selected the site because it offers a clear line of fire down a sunken road, with good concealment provided by hedgerows and a slight depression in the ground. The 6-pounder sits in a shallow revetment, sandbags piled around the trail legs, camouflage netting stretched overhead. From the road, it is nearly invisible. From the gun, the road is a narrow corridor framed by earth walls and vegetation. Any vehicle passing through will be trapped in that corridor, unable to maneuver, forced to advance or retreat in single file. Intelligence reports have been spotty. The Germans are regrouping after the initial shock of the invasion, pulling panzer divisions from reserve positions and committing them to counterattacks meant to split the Allied beachhead. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend is operating in the area, along with elements of Panzer Lehr. Both are elite formations, well-equipped and aggressively led. Reconnaissance patrols have reported armored movement on the roads east of the British positions. Columns moving west, probing for weak points, testing defensive lines. It is only a matter of time before one of those columns is down Harker's road. The waiting is its own form of combat. Hours pass in silence, broken only by distant artillery and the occasional crackle of small arms fire from neighboring sectors. Harker and Davies take turns on watch, one at the gun, one resting in the shallow trench behind it. They eat cold rations. They do not smoke, despite the craving, because the scent carries and the glow at night draws fire. They speak in whispers when they speak at all. Mostly they listen. The bocage has a way of swallowing sound and then releasing it without warning. A voice that seems a mile away might belong to a patrol 50 yards distant. An engine that sounds distant could be just beyond the next hedgerow. Davies is 19, a factory worker from Manchester who enlisted the day after his birthday. He loads the gun with mechanical efficiency, but lacks the hardness that comes from prolonged exposure to violence. He still flinches at the sound of incoming shells. He still looks away when they pass bodies in the road. Harker does not judge him for it. Everyone starts somewhere. The ones who survive either adapt or break. There is no middle ground. Harker himself is 26, older than most sergeants in the infantry. He served in North Africa, saw action at El Alamein and in the long pursuit across Libya. He knows what German armor can do. He has seen Shermans brew up, watched crews burn alive because the hatches jammed or the ammunition cooked off before they could bail out. He has also seen what happens when anti-tank guns are positioned poorly or fired hastily. The wreckage is no less ugly. The screams are no less desperate. War does not care about nationality or cause. It chews through men with equal indifference. The morning of June 14th brings low clouds and a chill that cuts through wool uniforms. Visibility is poor, maybe 200 yards at best. Moisture hangs in the air, not quite rain, but heavy enough to soak through clothes and dampen morale. Harker checks the gun for the third time that hour. The breech is clean. The sights are aligned. Ammunition is stacked within easy reach, armor-piercing rounds with black tips, ready to slide into the chamber. Everything is prepared. Everything is waiting. Then the sound comes, faint at first, a murmur beneath the ambient noise of the countryside. Harker cocks his head, listening. Davies hears it too. The murmur grows into a growl. Diesel engines, multiple engines, heavy vehicles moving at cautious speed. Harker's pulse quickens, but his breathing stays steady. This is it. This is what they have been waiting for. He signals Davies, a quick gesture that means load and stand ready. Davies lifts a round from the stack, cradles it like something fragile, slides it into the breech. The mechanism closes with a metallic click that seems too loud in the stillness. Harker presses his eye to the gun sight, scanning the length of road visible through the hedgerows. Shadows move in the mist. Shapes coalesce into hard edges and recognizable forms. Panzers. 4, maybe 5 of them advancing in a tight column, spacing no more than 20 yards between vehicles. They move slowly, cautiously, turrets traversing left and right as commanders scan for threats. The lead tank commander stands in his cupola, head and shoulders visible, binoculars raised. Behind him, the second Panzer follows, then the third, a parade of armor funneled into a killing lane that has no idea it is about to become a grave. Thomas Harker was not supposed to be a soldier. He grew up in Yorkshire, the son of a coal miner who died of black lung when Thomas was 14. He left school to work the same mines, descending into darkness every morning, emerging every evening caked in dust and exhaustion. The war came as both catastrophe and opportunity. Conscription pulled him from the pits in 1940, and he discovered something unexpected. He was good at this. Not the marching or the saluting, but the essential craft of staying alive while making the enemy dead. He has a patience that comes from years underground, waiting for the right moment to swing a pick, reading the subtle cracks in rock that signal danger. He applies that same patience to warfare. He watches, he learns. He does not waste motion or ammunition. Other men call it instinct. Harker knows it is simply attention to detail carried to its logical extreme. But patience alone does not explain what happens next. There is another quality, harder to name, that separates men like Harker from those who follow orders until those orders kill them. It is the willingness to trust your own judgment even when it contradicts everything you have been taught. To see the gap between doctrine and reality and step into that gap knowing you might be wrong. Knowing that if you are wrong, you will answer for it, assuming you survive to answer at all. Harker has been a sergeant for 11 months. He has kept men alive through North Africa and now through Normandy by making decisions that sometimes bend the rules and sometimes break them outright. His platoon commander tolerates this because Harker's gun crew has the highest kill count in the battalion and the lowest casualty rate. Results by latitude, but latitude has limits. The firing pattern Harker has conceived is not codified in any manual. It violates the fundamental principle of anti-tank ambush doctrine, which is to disable the lead vehicle and create a roadblock. Instead, Harker plans to ignore the lead panzer entirely and target a vehicle deeper in the column. The logic is brutal in its simplicity. If you kill the third or fourth tank, the vehicles behind it cannot advance. The vehicles in front do not immediately know where the threat is. Confusion spreads faster than orders. The column fragments. Crews bail out or button up. Either way, they stop behaving like a coordinated unit and start behaving like individuals trying not to die. And individuals, no matter how well trained, are easier to kill than a coordinated formation. The risk is equally simple. By ignoring the lead tank, you allow it to locate your position and return fire. A Panzer IV carries a 75mm main gun and 2 machine guns. It can obliterate a 6-pounder position in seconds if it knows where to shoot. You get one chance. Maybe two if you are fast and lucky. After that, you are either moving or dying. Harker has accepted this. What he has not resolved is whether he has the right to accept it on behalf of Davies, who did not volunteer for this plan and does not know it exists. The second angle is technical. The 6-pounder anti-tank gun is a weapon of compromises. It fires a 57mm projectile at high velocity, enough to penetrate the side armor of most German tanks at ranges under 500 yards. Frontally, the story is different. The Panzer IV's frontal plate, especially on the later G and H models, can resist the 6-pounder unless the shot is perfectly placed. Lower glacis, turret ring, driver's visor, small targets on a moving vehicle at combat ranges. Gunners are trained to aim center mass and hope. Harker does not hope. He aims for the thinnest armor, which is always the side or rear. To hit the side, you need the target to present its flank. In a narrow road where tanks advance nose to tail, flanks are exposed to positions perpendicular to the road. Harker's gun is not perpendicular. It is angled, maybe 20 degrees off the road's axis. Not ideal, but sufficient. If he waits for the right moment, if he picks the right target, the angle will give him a side shot on a tank that is not expecting fire from that direction. The unauthorized part of his firing pattern is not just which tank he targets, but how he engages afterward. Doctrine says fire, assess, reposition if possible. Harker plans to fire, reload, and fire again at a different target before the enemy can respond. Rapid engagement of multiple targets from a static position. It is the kind of tactic that works in desperation or genius, and looks like suicide in hindsight if it fails. The 6-pounder can achieve a rate of fire of 10 rounds per minute under ideal conditions with a well-trained crew. Davies is not well-trained by veteran standards, but he is quick and he does not panic. Harker thinks they can manage 6 rounds per minute, maybe 7. Enough to put 3 or 4 panzers out of action before return fire makes the position untenable. The third angle belongs to the Germans. The panzer column moving toward Harker's position is part of a reconnaissance in force, a probing attack meant to locate Allied anti-tank positions and test the strength of the defensive line. They are not expecting significant resistance. Intelligence briefings told them the British are overstretched, still consolidating the beachhead, vulnerable to aggressive armored thrusts. The column commander, a Hauptmann named Erich Stolz, has fought in Poland, France, and Russia. He knows how to read terrain. He knows the bocage is a death trap for armor, but he also knows that hesitation invites defeat. Better to move quickly, accept casualties, and achieve objectives than to sit paralyzed by fear of ambush. His lead tank, commanded by Oberfeldwebel Ritter, advances with hatches open despite the risk. Ritter has been a tank commander for 3 years. He has survived by being alert, aggressive, and lucky. He scans the hedgerows through binoculars looking for the telltale shapes of gun barrels or the unnatural lines of camouflage netting. He sees nothing. The road seems clear. Behind Ritter, the 2nd Panzer is commanded by a younger man, Unteroffizier Lang, who has been in combat for only 2 months. Lang follows doctrine. He keeps his interval. He watches Ritter's tank for signals. He trusts that if there is danger, Ritter will spot it first. This trust is reasonable and fatal. The 3rd Panzer in the column is commanded by Feldwebel Kurtz, a veteran like Ritter, but less cautious. Kurtz believes the war is already lost, that Germany is bleeding itself white for a cause that died at Stalingrad. He does his duty because the alternative is a firing squad, but his heart is not in it. He sits in his cupola smoking a cigarette, the turret hatch propped open, watching the hedgerows with the dull gaze of a man who has seen too much. The 4th and 5th tanks are crewed by men whose names Harker will never know. They are professionals doing a job in a war that is ground on too long. They do not expect to die today. None of them do. The tactical environment is as much a participant in what follows as any human decision. The bocage is ancient, a landscape shaped by centuries of Norman farming. Each field is bordered by hedgerows that rise 8 to 12 feet high, dense tangles of roots, earth, and vegetation that stop tanks as effectively as concrete walls. The sunken roads, worn down by generations of cart traffic, sit below the level of the surrounding fields. A vehicle traveling these roads moves through a trench with walls of earth on either side. There is no room to turn around, no space to deploy off-road. Advance or retreat are the only options. For armor, this is claustrophobia made tactical. The weather adds another layer of difficulty. The morning mist reduces visibility to a murky gray tunnel. Sounds behave strangely in the fog. Engine noise seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Distance becomes impossible to judge. For Harker, this is an advantage. The panzers will not see his position until they are well within effective range. For the Germans, it is a source of mounting tension. Every meter of advance feels like moving deeper into a trap. Stoltz, commanding from the 2nd Panzer, considers halting to wait for the mist to lift. But halting makes them sitting targets. Movement, however dangerous, feels safer than stillness. He orders the column forward. Harker watches the lead panzer approach through his gun sight. The crosshairs settle on the glacis plate, then drift away. Not this one. The tank passes his position, 30 yards out, turret swiveling, commander still scanning with binoculars. Harker holds his breath. Davies shifts nervously behind him, confused. Every instinct screams to fire. The target is perfect. The range is point blank. But Harker waits. The 2nd Panzer enters his field of view. Same story. Let it pass. His finger rests on the trigger guard, not the trigger itself. A safety against reflex. The 3rd Panzer comes into view. Kurtz with his cigarette, bored and alert in equal measure. Harker's crosshairs track the turret, then slide downward to the hull. Side armor. Thinner than the front. Vulnerable. But still he waits. The geometry is not quite right. The angle gives him a partial flank shot, but not clean enough. One more second. The Panzer rolls forward. The angle opens. Harker sees the gap between the front and side armor, the slight bulge where the hull transitions. Perfect. He fires. The 5th angle is the command response, or rather the lack of it. Lieutenant Ashford is not at the gun position. He is 200 yards back, in a covered trench that serves as the platoon command post, monitoring radio traffic and waiting for reports. He does not hear the first shot. When he does hear it, seconds later, he does not immediately understand what has happened. The sound reaches him as a dull thump, distorted by distance and terrain. He keys his radio, demanding a sit rep. No response. Harker is too busy reloading to answer. Ashford listens to the subsequent shots, a rapid sequence of booms that violates every protocol he has been taught. You do not engage multiple targets from a static position. You fire once, displace, fire again from a new location. What Harker is doing sounds like a gunner who has panicked or lost his mind. Ashford considers ordering him to cease fire and withdraw, but before he can formulate the order, the radio erupts with German voices. Panicked shouts, screams. The enemy frequency has bled over onto the British net, a common occurrence when radios are close and interference is high. Ashford does not speak German, but he recognizes terror when he hears it. The 6th angle is what the Panzer crews experience. Kurtz is halfway through his cigarette when the world ends. The impact sounds like a hammer striking an anvil, a metallic shriek that overloads the senses. The shell punches through the side armor just below the turret ring, a neat hole that erupts into a storm of spalling inside the tank. White-hot fragments of metal ricochet through the crew compartment. The driver is killed instantly, his head snapped back by a piece of armor plate traveling faster than a bullet. The gunner and radio operator are shredded by secondary fragments. Kurtz, in the turret, is partially shielded by the gun breech, but the blast wave slams him against the hatch rim. His cigarette is gone. His vision is gone. Blood fills his mouth. He tries to move and discovers his legs do not respond. Fire blooms in the engine compartment. Smoke floods the interior. Somewhere beneath him, ammunition begins to cook off. Small pops at first, then a sustained crackling like fireworks. Kurtz knows what comes next. He claws at the hatch, trying to pull himself out, but his body will not obey. The last thing he hears is his own screaming. Lang, in the 2nd Panzer, hears the explosion and sees smoke billow from the tank behind him. His first thought is mine. His second thought is reverse. He screams into the intercom for his driver to back up, now full speed. The driver complies, jamming the transmission into reverse, gunning the engine. The Panzer lurches backward. 2 seconds later, another explosion. This time, it is the 4th tank in the column, the one directly behind Kurtz. The shell hits low, near the drive sprocket. The track separates, flailing like a severed limb. The tank slews sideways, blocking the road. The 5th Panzer, trying to reverse, collides with it. Metal screeches against metal. Both tanks are immobilized, stuck together in a tangle of steel. Ritter, in the lead tank, finally understands what is happening. He drops into the turret, slamming the hatch shut, shouting for his gunner to traverse right and fire into the hedgerow where the shots originated. The gunner traverses. The hedgerow erupts in a storm of high explosive. Earth and vegetation fly into the air. The concussion rattles Harker's position, but does no real damage. The shot was 15 yards off target. Ritter curses, orders a correction. The turret traverses again, but before the gunner can fire, another impact. This time it is Lang's Panzer. The shell penetrates the rear deck, driving down into the engine. Flame erupts from the exhaust grills. Lang and his crew bail out, tumbling into the road, uniforms smoking. They run for the hedgerows, not caring which direction, just away from the burning metal. Stoltz, observing from behind the column, sees his entire formation disintegrating. 4 tanks dead or disabled in under 30 seconds. He cannot see the enemy position. He cannot coordinate a response. All he can do is order a general withdrawal and hope someone survives to report what happened. His driver needs no encouragement. The Panzer is already reversing, engine screaming, tracks throwing mud. They withdraw down the road, abandoning the burning wrecks and the men stumbling through the smoke. By the time Ritter's tank fires a third shell at the suspected enemy position, the target is no longer there. Harker and Davies are already gone, dragging the 6-pounder back through the hedgerow, putting distance between themselves and the retribution that will inevitably come. The first shot leaves the barrel at 08:47 hours. Harker does not think about doctrine or consequences. He thinks about the angle, the distance, the precise point where metal will meet metal. His finger completes the squeeze. The gun roars. The recoil slams the trail spades deeper into the earth. Smoke and dust explode from the muzzle, momentarily obscuring his view. He does not need to see. He knows the shot is good. Years of training and instinct compress into a single moment of certainty. The sound of impact reaches him a fraction of a second later, a sharp crack followed by a deeper secondary explosion. Ammunition or fuel, both mean death. Davies is already moving. The spent shell casing clatters onto the ground. He lifts another round from the stack, a black-tipped armor-piercing shot that weighs 14 pounds. His hands do not shake. There is no time for fear. He slots the round into the breech. The mechanism closes. Harker is already traversing the gun, tracking right, searching for the next target. The 4th Panzer in the column, the one directly behind Kurtz's burning wreck, is trying to reverse. The driver has panicked, jerking the controls, and the tank slews at an angle. The side armor presents itself. Harker adjusts his aim. The tank is moving, but not fast. He leads the target by 2 feet, accounting for speed and distance. He fires again. The shell strikes low, just above the road wheels. It punches through the belly armor where the plate is thinnest. Inside, the penetration creates a jet of molten metal and superheated gas. It incinerates the driver before his nerves can register pain. It tears through the ammunition storage bins, and the tank detonates from within. The turret lifts off its ring, suspended in the air for a surreal moment before crashing down beside the hull. Flame vomits from every hatch. The explosion is so violent that debris rain. It's down on the surrounding tanks. A section of track smashes into Lang's Panzer, denting the turret. Fragments of armor plate embed themselves in the hedgerows. Now the Germans know where the fire is coming from. Ritter's gunner traverses the main gun toward Harker's position, aided by the muzzle flash and smoke that mark the 6-pounder's location. The German gun fires. The 75mm shell screams over Harker's head, missing by 15 yards, detonating in the field behind him. The blast wave hits like a physical blow. Dirt and shrapnel pelt the camouflage netting. Davies ducks instinctively. Harker does not. He is already loading the next round himself, hands moving with mechanical efficiency. The British gun is lighter than the German weapon, easier to maneuver, faster to reload. That speed is the only advantage they have. He has to use it. Lang's Panzer is still mobile, still dangerous. The commander has recovered from his initial shock and is trying to maneuver out of the killing zone. The driver guns the engine, attempting to push past Kurtz's burning wreck. The tank lurches forward, tracks grinding against the hulk. For a moment, it seems like the maneuver will work. Then Harker fires again. This shot is rushed, less precise. It hits the turret at an angle, glancing off the frontal armor. Sparks fly. The shell ricochets into the sky. A miss. Davies curses. Harker does not react. He is already adjusting, reloading, compensating for the error. Davies feeds another round into the breach. Harker aims lower this time, targeting the engine deck. The range is under 100 yards now. Point blank. He fires. The shell penetrates the rear armor. The engine explodes in a gout of flame and black smoke. Lang's tank grinds to a halt dead in the road. The crew bails out, hatches flying open, men tumbling onto the ground. One of them is on fire. He rolls in the mud, screaming, trying to extinguish the flames that cling to his uniform. His crewmates drag him toward the hedgerow, away from the inferno that was their vehicle. They do not look back. Survival is forward, away, anywhere but here. Stoltz watches from his cupola, frozen in disbelief. 5 minutes ago, he commanded a functioning armored column. Now he commands a graveyard. 4 tanks are dead or dying. Crews are scattered. The road is blocked by burning steel. He has no target to shoot at. The hedgerows reveal nothing. Whoever is doing this is invisible, methodical, and terrifyingly effective. He grabs the radio handset, shouting orders to retreat, to withdraw back down the road and regroup. His driver does not wait for the order to be completed. The Panzer is already moving in reverse, transmission howling in protest. They back down the sunken lane at reckless speed, tracks throwing mud, turret traversing wildly in case another shot comes. Ritter's tank is the last combat-effective vehicle. He could advance, try to close with the enemy position, use the superior armor of his frontal plate to weather fire while his gunner locates and destroys the threat. This is what doctrine demands. This is what bravery would dictate. But Ritter is not brave. He is experienced, and experience has taught him that dead heroes do not collect pensions. He orders his driver to reverse. The Panzer IV backs down the road, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as the crew realizes no one is going to stop them. They leave behind the burning wrecks and the men struggling in the smoke. They leave behind Kurtz, still trapped in his turret. His screams finally silent. They leave behind the illusion that armor is invincible and that doctrine is sufficient. Harker watches them go through the gunsight. He has 1 round left in the ready rack. He could fire at the retreating tanks, try for a long shot at the engine decks. But the range is opening, the angle is poor, and he has already achieved more than he had any right to expect. He lifts his eye from the sight. The road before him is a scene from hell. 4 panzers burn. Smoke rises in thick black columns. The smell of diesel fuel and burning flesh drifts on the wind. Bodies lie in the road, some moving, some not. German voices call out, desperate pleas for help that no one will answer. Harker feels nothing. Not pride, not guilt. Just the cold satisfaction of a job completed. He taps Davies on the shoulder. Time to move. The Germans will return, and when they do, they will bring artillery. They uncouple the gun from its sandbag emplacement. The trail legs fold up, the wheels drop down. It takes 30 seconds. They haul the 6-pounder backward through a gap in the hedgerow, into the field beyond, then through another hedgerow into a covered position they scouted 2 days ago. By the time they settle into the new location, the first German artillery shells are screaming in. High explosive rounds detonate along the road, blasting craters into the earth, shredding the remains of the camouflage netting. Splinters of wood and metal fly through the air. If they had stayed, they would be dead. Harker knows this. Davies knows this. Neither speaks of it. They set up the gun, stack fresh ammunition, and wait to see if the war will find them again. The silence that follows the German withdrawal is not peaceful. It is the silence of shock. The stunned quiet that descends after violence has exhausted itself. Smoke drifts across the sunken road in lazy spirals. The fires in the wrecked panzers burn with a dull roar, metal popping and crackling as heat warps steel. The smell is overpowering now, a mix of burning rubber, diesel fuel, and something else that Harker recognizes but does not name. He checks his watch. The entire engagement lasted 4 minutes. From first shot to last, 240 seconds. In that span, a German armored column ceased to exist. Davies sits with his back against the hedgerow, hands trembling now that the adrenaline is fading. He stares at the ground, breathing hard, eyes unfocused. Harker leaves him alone. Everyone processes combat differently. Some men talk, some go silent, some laugh at inappropriate moments. Davies is the silent type, and that is fine. Harker scans the field behind them, checking for threats, listening for the sound of infantry or additional armor. The Germans will not leave this unanswered. They will send reconnaissance, maybe a full company with infantry support. The question is when? Minutes? Hours? Harker does not know, and not knowing is worse than certainty. Lieutenant Ashford arrives 10 minutes later, jogging across the field with 2 riflemen in tow. His face is flushed, a mix of exertion and confusion. He drops into the covered position beside Harker, breathing hard. He stares at the gun, then at Harker, then at the smoke rising from the road beyond the hedgerow. His mouth opens and closes twice before words come out. What the hell happened? Harker gives him the short version. 5 panzers, 4 destroyed, 1 retreated. Ashford's expression cycles through disbelief, anger, and something that might be awe. He asks how. Harker explains the firing pattern, the choice to ignore the lead vehicle, the rapid engagement of multiple targets. Ashford listens in silence. When Harker finishes, the lieutenant says nothing for a long moment. Then he asks the question that Harker has been expecting. Did you have authorization for that tactic? Harker meets his eyes. No, sir. Ashford's jaw tightens. He looks away, toward the smoke, toward the evidence of what unauthorized action can accomplish. The book says he should reprimand Harker, maybe even relieve him. The book says initiative is encouraged, but deviation from doctrine requires prior approval. The book says a lot of things that make sense in a classroom and fall apart under fire. Ashford is young, but not stupid. He can see the burning panzers. He can count the wrecks. He knows what Harker just did, knows that if it had failed, they would both be dead and the German column would have rolled through the British line unopposed. Finally, Ashford nods. Write it up as a standard engagement. Lead vehicle disabled, column halted, follow-up shots as opportunity allowed. Harker nods. Understood, sir. They both know it is a lie. They both know the lie is necessary. Ashford departs, taking the rifleman with him, heading back to report to battalion. Harker and Davies remain in position, watching the road, waiting. The morning wears on. The mist lifts. Visibility improves to a few hundred yards, revealing the full extent of the carnage. From their new position, Harker can see the wrecked tanks more clearly. The 3rd Panzer, Kurtz's tank, is gutted. The hull is a blackened shell, the interior visible through holes torn in the armor. The 4th tank has no turret. It sits on its chassis like a broken toy, flames still licking from the open top. The 2nd and 5th tanks are close together, locked in their collision, both burning. The paint has blistered off the hulls, leaving bare, scorched metal. Bodies lie in the road, 3 of them, motionless. Other crew members are somewhere in the bocage, alive or dead. Harker does not know and does not care. Around noon, German artillery begins in earnest. Not the hasty fire from earlier, but a sustained bombardment. Shells scream overhead, detonating in the fields and along the road. The Germans are saturating the area, trying to destroy whatever anti-tank position caused the damage. Harker and Davies hunker down in their trench, heads below ground level, hands over ears. The earth shakes with each impact. Dirt rains down on them. A shell lands 20 yards away, close enough that the blast wave compresses their lungs. Davies looks at Harker with wide eyes, silently asking if they should move again. Harker shakes his head. Moving during a barrage is suicide. They stay put, enduring, waiting for the storm to pass. The bombardment lasts 15 minutes, then stops as abruptly as it began. The silence afterward is eerie, broken only by the ringing in their ears and the distant crackle of fires. Harker risks a look over the trench lip. The road is cratered, the wrecked panzers further mangled by high explosive. The hedgerows are shredded, gaps blown through the vegetation. But their position is intact. The Germans were firing blind, guessing at coordinates, and their guesses were close but not close enough. Harker settles back into the trench. They are still alive. For now, that is all that matters. Infantry comes next. Harker hears them before he sees them, the rustle of equipment, the low voices speaking German. He signals Davies, a quick hand gesture that means load and prepare. Davies lifts around, slides it home. Harker peers through the gunsight, scanning the hedgerow opposite their position. Shadows move, figures in field gray, helmets distinct against the green vegetation. A German patrol, maybe a dozen men, sweeping the area, searching for survivors or intact equipment. They are cautious, rifles up, moving in pairs. Professional infantry, not the green conscripts that sometimes get thrown into the line. These men know their business. Harker has to make a decision, engage or let them pass. If he fires, he reveals his position again and invites another artillery barrage. If he lets them pass, they might discover the new gun position or call in additional forces. He weighs the options, calculates the risk. The patrol is not a direct threat. They are searchers, not attackers. He decides to wait. The Germans move through the area, checking the wrecked panzers, pulling dog tags from the bodies, collecting weapons and equipment. One of them climbs onto Kurtz's tank, peers into the open turret, then turns away quickly, hand over his mouth. They spend 20 minutes on the scene, then withdraw the way they came, heading back toward German lines. They do not find Harker. They do not even look in his direction. By mid-afternoon, the road is quiet again. No more artillery, no more patrols. The Germans have written off the position, too costly to assault, too exposed to hold. The British have no intention of advancing. The front line remains static, a stalemate measured in yards. Harker and Davies are relieved at 1600 hours by another gun crew. They walk back through the fields to the company area, lugging their personal equipment, leaving the 6-pounder for the next shift. They do not speak. Words seem inadequate. When they reach the rest area, a cluster of tents and trenches behind a rise, other men stare at them. Word has spread. The gun crew that killed 4 panzers, the sergeant who broke doctrine and survived. Harker ignores the stares. He finds a dry spot, sits down, and begins cleaning his rifle, a task that requires no thought and fills the void where thought would bring unwanted images. Davies sits beside him, still silent, still processing. After a while, he speaks. His voice is quiet, almost tentative. Did we do the right thing? Harker does not look up from his rifle. We are alive. They are not. That is the only right thing there is. Davies nods slowly, accepting the answer because he has no better one. They sit together in the fading afternoon light. 2 men who have seen the machinery of war operate at its most efficient and most terrible. They do not celebrate. They do not regret. They simply exist in the space between actions, waiting for the war to demand something else from them. The official report reaches battalion headquarters by 1800 hours. Lieutenant Ashford delivers it personally, a typed summary that describes the engagement in clinical language. 4 enemy tanks destroyed, 1 enemy tank damaged and withdrawn. Estimated enemy casualties 12 killed, unknown wounded. Friendly casualties none. Ammunition expended 9 rounds. Position maintained. He report does not mention the unauthorized firing pattern. It does not describe how Harker ignored the lead vehicle or engaged targets out of sequence. It reads like a textbook ambush, precisely executed according to doctrine. The battalion commander, a lieutenant colonel named Hawthorne, reads it twice. He looks up at Ashford. This is accurate? Ashford meets his gaze without flinching. Yes, sir. Every word. Hawthorne signs the report and files it. He does not ask questions. Results speak louder than methodology. By evening, the intelligence section has processed the information. 4 Panzer IVs confirmed destroyed. Unit identification suggests they belong to the 12th SS Panzer Division, part of a reconnaissance element probing British defenses. The destruction of the patrol has forced the Germans to reassess their approach. They now know the British anti-tank screen is deeper and more effective than anticipated. Future probes will require heavier support, more artillery preparation, infantry screening. The cost of advancing through this sector has increased significantly. For the staff officers drawing lines on maps, this is a tactical success. For the men holding the line, it is a temporary reprieve before the next attack. Recovery teams move on to the battlefield after dark. They approach cautiously, wary of booby traps or lingering German patrols. The wrecked panzers are still warm, metal ticking as it cools. Engineers photograph the damage, measuring penetration holes, documenting where each shell struck. The patterns are unusual. Multiple side hits, none frontal. The lead tank is untouched. The others are systematically destroyed, one after another, in rapid sequence. The engineers confer among themselves. This does not match typical engagement patterns. Someone deviated from standard tactics. Someone got creative. They make notes, sketch diagrams, collect shell fragments for analysis. The information will filter up through intelligence channels, eventually reaching training commands where instructors will study it and wonder if there is a lesson worth teaching. The bodies are handled last. 3 German tankers lie in the road, 2 burned beyond recognition, 1 intact enough to identify. His paybook lists him as Gefreiter Hans Müller, age 23, from a village near Stuttgart. His pockets contain photographs of a young woman and a letter half-written. The recovery team wraps him in a tarp and places him with the others. They will be buried in a temporary cemetery, marked with wooden crosses, their families notified months later through Red Cross channels. War reduces men to paperwork and shallow graves. There is no ceremony. No one speaks their names aloud. They are simply processed, documented, and interred. Inside Kurtz's tank, the recovery team finds a body so badly burned that identification is impossible. They extract it carefully, trying to preserve what dignity remains. The stench is overwhelming. 2 of the soldiers vomit before the work is complete. They find Kurtz's dog tags fused to his chest, the metal partially melted. They record the number, add it to the Cashew. Alti list. Feldwebel Heinrich Kurtz, age 31, killed in action June 14, 1944. His war is over. His family will receive a letter expressing the Reich's gratitude for his sacrifice. They will never know he died screaming, trapped in burning steel, or that his last thoughts were not of duty or honor, but of simple animal terror. The intelligence recovered from the wrecked tanks proves valuable. Maps are found, partially burned but still legible, showing German dispositions and planned routes of advance. Radio equipment is salvaged, code books discovered tucked into a storage bin. An intelligence officer spends the night decrypting communications, learning call signs and frequencies. Within 48 hours, British signals units are monitoring those frequencies, intercepting German transmissions, building a clearer picture of enemy intentions. The 4 panzers cost more than metal and men. They cost operational security. Harker learns none of this. He is not included in intelligence briefings or damage assessments. He is a sergeant, a trigger puller, not a strategist. What he knows is what he can see. The next morning, he returns to his gun position for another shift. A different 6-pounder occupies the spot, a different crew manning it. They nod to him as he passes, respect in their eyes. The word has spread beyond the company now, through the battalion, into neighboring units. The sergeant who killed 4 panzers. The story grows with each retelling, details added or changed, the truth obscured by legend. Some versions have him destroying 6 tanks. Others claim he did it single-handed, without a loader. Harker hears the stories and says nothing. Correcting them would be pointless. Men need heroes, even small ones, even false ones. The war is ugly enough without taking away the myths that make it bearable. Davies handles the attention differently. He is younger, less armored against scrutiny. Other soldiers ask him what it was like, whether he was scared, how fast Harker fired. Davies answers briefly, uncomfortable with the questions. He does not tell them about the trembling hands or the silence that followed. He does not describe the smell of burning tanks or the sound of men screaming. He gives them the sanitized version, the one that fits their expectations. Yes, it was intense. Yes, the sergeant knew what he was doing. Yes, we got lucky. The answers satisfy them. They slap his back, offer him cigarettes, treat him like someone special. Davies accepts the attention because refusing would draw more questions. But at night, alone in his trench, he lies awake staring at the sky, replaying those 4 minutes over and over, wondering if he will ever feel normal again. Within a week, the engagement enters the formal after-action review process. A major from divisional headquarters arrives to interview Harker personally. They sit in a canvas tent that serves as the company command post, a folding table between them, rain drumming on the fabric overhead. The major is older, maybe 40, with ribbons from the last war across his chest. He has seen combat before, understands the difference between what happens and what gets written down. He asks Harker to describe the engagement step by step. Harker does, omitting nothing except the conscious decision to violate doctrine. He frames it as instinct, as reaction to the tactical situation, as improvisation born of necessity. The major listens without interrupting. When Harker finishes, the major sits back, tapping his pen against his notepad. You aimed for the 3rd tank first. Why? Harker considers lying, offering a reason that sounds acceptable. Instead, he tells the truth. The lead tank was alert. The ones behind it were not. I thought confusion would be more effective than a roadblock. The major nods slowly. Did you consider that this contradicts established anti-tank doctrine? Harker meets his eyes. Yes, sir. And you proceeded anyway? Yes, sir. The major makes a note. For a long moment, the only sound is rain and distant artillery. Then the major speaks again, his tone careful, measured. Doctrine exists for a reason, Sergeant. It is built on lessons learned in blood. When men start ignoring it, people die. Harker nods. Understood, sir. But the major is not finished. That said, doctrine is not scripture. It adapts. Sometimes it adapts because men like you survive doing things they were not supposed to do. He closes his notebook. Your tactic worked. 4 tanks destroyed, no friendly losses. We would be fools not to examine why. The major departs the next day. Harker does not hear from him again, but 6 weeks later, a new training bulletin circulates through the division. It discusses alternative engagement techniques for anti-tank guns in restrictive terrain. It suggests that in certain circumstances, targeting vehicles deeper in an enemy column may produce better results than focusing on the lead element. It does not mention Harker by name. It does not describe the engagement on June 14th, but men who read it recognize the source. The tactic becomes known informally as the Harker pattern, a name that spreads through anti-tank platoons, debated in trenches and over tea, practiced on training ranges behind the lines. Some officers embrace it. Others reject it as reckless. Most acknowledge that in the chaos of combat, any technique that keeps your crew alive and the enemy dead has merit. The German response is slower but more systematic. The loss of 4 panzers to a single gun position triggers an investigation. How did it happen? Why did standard tactics fail? Survivors are interviewed, including Stoltz and Ritter, the commanders who withdrew. Their accounts are analyzed, compared, dissected by staff officers looking for lessons. The conclusion is uncomfortable. The British gunner ignored conventional targets and exploited the column's assumption of safety. German doctrine assumes the greatest threat comes from frontal engagement. Armor is thickest at the front. Formation discipline emphasizes forward vigilance. But if the enemy attacks from an unexpected angle, targets unexpected vehicles, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Recommendations are issued. Increase spacing between vehicles in column. Vary speed to prevent predictable intervals. Assign rear security observers. The changes are implemented gradually, filtering down to frontline units over the following months. But doctrine changes slowly and men die quickly. In the weeks after June 14th, other British anti-tank crews attempt similar tactics. Some succeed, some do not. A gun crew near Caen tries targeting the middle of a column and is obliterated by return fire before they can reload. 3 men die, the gun is destroyed, the tactic is blamed. Another crew south of Bayeux successfully destroys 2 tanks using the same method but is overrun by supporting infantry. The survivors are captured, the gun lost. Success requires not just the tactic but the terrain, the timing, the enemy's disposition, and a measure of luck that cannot be taught or replicated. Harker's success was not inevitable. It was possible, and possibility met preparation at the right moment. That is all any tactic ever is. Harker is promoted to staff sergeant in July. The promotion comes with a handwritten note from the battalion commander commending his initiative and effectiveness. There is no mention of unauthorized actions or doctrinal deviations. The note is carefully worded, praise without specifics, recognition without admission. Harker reads it once and discards it. Promotions mean little in combat. They come with more responsibility and the same risk of dying. He continues his work, manning his gun, training replacements, surviving. Davies remains his loader through the summer. They develop an efficiency that comes from shared experience. They do not talk about June 14th. They do not need to. The memory is there, unspoken, a bond formed in violence. By August, the breakout from Normandy begins. The front becomes fluid, mobile, chaotic. Anti-tank guns are loaded onto trucks, towed at speed down roads choked with traffic, deployed in hasty positions as German armor attempts counterattacks. Harker fights in a dozen more engagements, some successful, some desperate retreats under fire. He destroys 3 more panzers over the summer, plus 2 Stu-G assault guns and a half-track. His crew survives intact through luck and skill. Other crews are not as fortunate. The replacements arrive green and die experienced. The calculus of war continues, indifferent to innovation or courage. In September, Harker's unit crosses into Belgium. The war is moving faster now, the Germans retreating, the Allies pressing forward. There are rumors of an early end, of collapse, of surrender before winter. The rumors prove false. The Germans stabilize their lines, bring up reserves, prepare for another winter of fighting. Harker does not think about the end of the war. He thinks about the next engagement, the next target, the next decision that will mean life or death. The pattern he used on June 14th has become instinct now, not a conscious tactic but a reflex honed by repetition. He no longer questions whether to deviate from doctrine. He simply reads the situation and acts. Davies is wounded in October, a piece of shrapnel from a mortar round that tears through his shoulder. He survives, is evacuated to a field hospital, and eventually sent back to England for recovery. Harker never sees him again. A replacement arrives, a corporal named Bennett, competent but lacking Davies's intuition. Harker trains him, molds him, turns him into an adequate loader. It is not the same. The connection is professional, not personal. War does not allow time for sentiment. You work with who you have, trust what you can, and keep moving. The winter of 1944 is brutal. The war grinds on through snow and frozen mud. Harker fights in the Ardennes during the German offensive, his gun positioned in a forest clearing, engaging panzers that emerged like ghosts from the trees. He survives. His crew survives. The gun survives. By the time the offensive is broken and the Germans pushed back, Harker has stopped counting his kills. The numbers have lost meaning. What matters is the next shot, the next decision, the next moment of survival purchased at the cost of someone else's death. This is the arithmetic of war, brutal and inescapable. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. Harker is in Germany when the news arrives, his unit occupying a small town whose name he will forget within a year. The celebrations are muted. Men drink and laugh because that is what is expected, but the joy feels hollow. Too much has been lost to feel triumphant. Too many friends are buried in foreign soil. Harker sits alone that night, cleaning his rifle out of habit, listening to the distant sounds of revelry. He thinks about June 14, 1944, about the 4 minutes that defined everything that followed, about the decision to ignore what he was taught and trust what he understood, about the line between courage and recklessness, between initiative and insubordination, between survival and luck. War is often framed as a contest between systems, doctrine against doctrine, strategy against strategy. But in the end, it comes down to individuals making choices in moments of chaos. A sergeant deciding which tank to shoot, a commander deciding whether to advance or withdraw, a loader deciding whether his hands will obey despite the fear. These choices cascade outward, shaping battles, influencing outcomes, altering the trajectory of campaigns. Harker's choice on that gray morning in Normandy destroyed 4 tanks and saved lives. It also proved something harder to quantify. That rigid adherence to doctrine can be as deadly as ignorance. That innovation born of desperation has value. That sometimes the difference between defeat and victory is one man willing to think differently under fire. The British Army eventually codifies elements of Harker's tactic into official training, not as doctrine, but as an option, a tool in the toolkit of anti-tank warfare. Other armies study the engagement, draw their own conclusions, adapt their own methods. The lessons spread quietly, without fanfare, absorbed into the collective knowledge of military institutions. Harker receives no medal for June 14th. His name does not appear in histories or official accounts. He is simply one of thousands of sergeants who did their jobs and survived. But the men who served with him remember. The crews he trained carry forward what he taught them. Knowledge propagates through action, not documentation. Harker returns to England in the summer of 1945. He does not go back to the coal mines. The war has changed him in ways that make the darkness underground unbearable. He finds work above ground, in a factory, doing simple labor that requires no decisions beyond the mechanical. He marries, has children, lives a quiet life that bears no resemblance to the years between 1940 and 1945. He does not speak of the war. When his children ask, he offers vague answers that satisfy without revealing. The memories remain, buried but not forgotten, surfacing in dreams that leave him awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds that are not there. The question that haunts him is not whether he did the right thing. He knows he did. The question is what it cost him to become the kind of man who could make that choice, who could watch men burn and feel nothing, who could kill with precision and efficiency and then sit down to eat a meal. War requires this transformation. It demands that ordinary men become capable of extraordinary violence. Some men break under the demand, some embrace it. Harker simply endured it, neither broken nor whole, existing in the space between. He carried the weight because there was no alternative, because someone had to, because the machinery of war required fuel, and men were the fuel it consumed. On June 14, 1944, one gunner made a decision that contradicted his training and altered the course of a single engagement. 4 tanks burned, a column was destroyed, a tactic was born. In the vast machinery of the Second World War, it was a small moment. But small moments accumulate. They shape the larger patterns. They prove that individuals matter, that choices have consequences, that courage and innovation exist even in systems designed to suppress them. Thomas Harker did not change the war, but for 4 minutes on a gray morning in Normandy, he changed what was possible. And sometimes, in the chaos and horror of combat, that is enough.